and away we go. It's just me at the moment. Not sure if Risk is going to join, not sure if Eric's going to join, and I'm not sure if a third person is going to join. That's very unlikely. However, it must go on. Let's see what's in the news for me to rant about. Private equity sees profits in power utilities as electric bills rise and big tech seeks more energy. In recent weeks, a BlackRock subsidiary and the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board proposed a $6.2 billion buyout of Aleti, parent of Minnesota Power, with Aleti saying the $67 a share deal at a 19% premium won't change operations or rates. Billions of dollars are moving towards utilities serving more than 150 million customers as private investment firms financing AI and data centers target local power providers. Ahead of an October 3rd vote, Commission staff and the judge flagged concerns as Administrative Law Judge Megan J. McKenzie recommended rejecting Minnesota's power buyout over private equity profit motives. Building trade unions and Governor Tim Walz support Alete and BlackRock, while the state attorney general's office and major industrial customers opposed the deal amid $4.3 billion upgrade plans tied to Minnesota's 100% carbon-free by 2040 law. Utilities typically deliver around 10% returns via regulator-allowed upcharges on capital investments, attracting private equity investors seeking about 10% returns in electric utilities, while Larry Fink called infrastructure at the beginning of a golden age. Now, I'm just wondering, what can I say for this? I might go off on a limb here. Why don't residents generate power for themselves, and they can give the access power to other neighbors or other neighboring towns or villages, and even cities, perhaps? For too long, local people, in fact everyone around the world, have been reliant on getting power, electricity, and gas from these companies that provide power. And now I'm not sure if I can't be too sure I've heard people complaining about the high rates and the price of electricity and gas bills. If they are, however, why not just buy a couple of solar panels? Maybe get a miniature wind turbine installed on top of your house or apartment complex, wherever you live. Get whatever power is generated there, and then whatever of the excess power that is left unused, give it to other people nearby, other apartment buildings, other homes across the nation or the world, if power can be distributed that far. This is just me. If I were a homeowner, and I'm sick and tired of having to pay a couple thousand each year for electricity or gas, I would just buy a couple solar panels and a wind turbine, miniature size, and then install on top of my house, a roof, or I don't know where I put it, but at least I put it on a roof. And then whatever power is generated from that comes to me, and then I can just give that extra power that I'm not using to other people, and maybe get a couple cash from there. I don't get why not many people aren't doing that. If they knew they could do that, they would. But yeah, they're not doing that. And so back to the private equity, profits, power utilities. Whoop-de-doo. What a surprise. To literally no one. I think everyone should know by now that there's always going to be people that's going to be greedy for money and that will find ways to make a profit out of most things. Not everything, but most things. Because that's how the world works. The world is revolved around money. And nothing but money. Maybe a couple more things, but money is the primary objective for a lot of people, unfortunately. And of course, there is certainly more to life than making money. That I can guarantee for sure. However, financial costs are always an obstacle for everyone in their day-to-day lives. I can't say I'm surprised because I knew this for years. Not with not power utility company, but any company or organization that has ever existed. There has to be some kind of distribution financially between organizations, companies, and even people. I say mostly people is the most important, because without the people, how would these companies operate? That is a question. A question for the ages, that's for sure. Wildfires in western US play a role in global warming, research shows. Oh dear, I'm trying to look for an article that tells the story, but all I'm getting is 451 unavailable due to legal reasons. I'm sorry, what legal reasons? Am I not allowed to read what a particular news outlet is talking about? Oh dear, this is just sad. It's very unfortunate. Well, someone's talking about something. Wildfires in western US. Well, based off the headline alone, wildfires are a serious problem. How should this be addressed? I would say, and I'm certainly sure that something like this has not happened yet, but I would love to see something like that happening. Get a couple drones. No, they're too small. Maybe a helicopter. Get a massive bucket, scoop the water from reservoirs, lakes, preferably the Pacific Ocean, because there's tons of water there. Sprinkle the water all over the dry land, or at least land that is very dry. At least something to water the plants, periodically, every now and then. Preferably, I would have the ground, or at least the land, be watered very early in the morning, most preferably before sunrise. Because by watering the ground, the plants, the trees, whatever vegetation is around the western part of the United States, by the time the sun rises, the temperature will gradually go up. And then the droplets of water on the ground that's left that are not seeping into the ground yet, they will evaporate, creating some kind of humidity, which I'm not too sure on this. I know someone will say something and I'll take their word for it. The evaporation from those water droplets evaporate into the air, creating some kind of invisible humidity, which then turns into white fluffy clouds that everyone is very familiar with, and then by the time those clouds get bigger and bigger and a lot grayer, then at that point, those clouds start to rain onto the ground at whatever time it so pleases. That's what I would do. I think that was awesome. Now, there's other challenges, practically, that will come along the way, but I know there will be experts on this matter that surely will find a way. That I am for sure. And with that being said, I will look into this further, because for some reason, the app I'm using to look at news stories, they're not letting me look at what outlet or publisher is saying on this story. I'm not saying it's a Matrix attack, although Risk and/or Eric will argue otherwise. There is another force, so we'll get to that point in our lives when that time comes about again, and if Risk and/or Eric is also with me, because they have to know about this. But that's just me. I always go on something. Indian police arrest activist Wangchuk after deadly Ladakh protests on September 2025. Authorities in India took Sonam Wangchuk, a well-known activist from Ladakh, into custody following deadly demonstrations in Leh. The arrest came after violent protests on September 25th resulted in the deaths of 4 or more individuals and caused injuries to many others amid calls for Ladakh to gain statehood. Wangchuk, known for environmental work and schooling reforms, had staged a hunger strike demanding full statehood or constitutional protections for Ladakh's land and people. Authorities suspended mobile internet, imposed curfews, restricted gatherings to 5 people, and blamed Wanchuk's speeches for inciting violence, while Wanchuk denied these accusations. The detention highlights growing tensions over Ladakh's political autonomy since its 2019 separation from Jammu and Kashmir and delayed constitutional promises to protect the region. So that's it. Authorities in India are saying that Wanchuk's speeches are inciting violence when activist Wanchuk has called up for protests for autonomy for the Ladakh, for the region of, I don't know what Ladakh is, but I know the protest, something has something to do with Ladakh and its separation from Jammu and Kashmir. From that information, it kind of sounds like a threat. And not the kind of threat that is a genuine concern for day-to-day living. It's a threat to high authority. I mean, what do these authorities have against allowing small regions or communities to be separated from other bigger regions and allow them to govern themselves in the way they want to govern themselves? Personally, I would allow it. I don't see a problem with this whatsoever. Now, if they do get autonomy and there's more violence that eventually comes out of it, then I would argue against that. No violence should ever come out of anyone or any place whatsoever. However, if it's just asking for some kind of autonomy or separation to govern themselves, I don't see why not. Anyway, that's all I know for now. There could be more as times go by. I just don't get it. What's the big deal with not allowing Ladakh to be given autonomy of some sort? Is it? I know this is, and I'm just hearing this for the first time. However, from that information I already know that I just read, again, I don't get it. I would allow it personally. Venezuelan actress arrested for alleged involvement in the deaths of Colombian musicians speaking and Regio Clown, by Mauricio Torres, CNN en español, Venezuelan actress and content creator Angelica Yetzi Torini Leon, also known as Angie Miller, was arrested in Mexico for her alleged connection to the deaths of 2 Colombian musicians whose bodies were found on September 17th, according to information from the Mexico City Attorney General's office and the Federal Security Secretariat. I got the full summary, and now it's in Spanish. I understand some Spanish, but not enough to speak it. Clown. The arrest was made after she was summoned to testify in the case. Despite her arrest, it has not been specified what her role in the crime may have been. However, the investigation points to her as a possible suspect. Hours before being reported missing, Angie shared a message on social media writing, "Today I hate Mexico more than my life. Everything that's happening isn't fair." Days later, his wanted profile in Mexico City was revealed, until she was finally located and arrested. To date, Angie Miller remains in the custody of the Mexican authorities. However, no formal charges have been filed, and no direct evidence of her involvement has been released, so the investigation remains open. Body with signs of violence found on Oquijimilico Highway. I'm certain I've butchered that for sure. Wow, that's shocking. That's not even enough to describe the situation, or at least my reaction. Well, firstly, rest in peace to B King and Regio Clown. I send my deepest condolences to the friends and family of B King and Regio Clown. I may not know who those musicians are, but that does not mean does not mean it's any less important. It's so sad. Not just the fact people die from murder, or whatever your motive is. However, what even went down between these people? Because you don't unalive people without having some kind of motive or some kind of plot that ignites you to get revenge on those people. I believe there has to be more to this. Now, if Angie Miller is guilty, I hope that she gets a punishment that really does reflect her actions against these two Colombian musicians. And if not, and if Angie Miller is not guilty, wow, that is not a good look on Mexican authorities. So I see this as a lose-lose. Famous musicians got killed, and someone is going to be paying the price. And if not someone not paying the price, well, they still roam free and could potentially kill more people. If there is a history behind whatever killing does go about, this should not happen. But yet it does. And if we do arrest people for their crimes, what's being done behind closed bars? What's actually being done in the place which these criminals are being kept in? I feel it's this more than it also comes down to the culture. In America, I know for certain you just get behind bars, and the culture with most prison systems in many countries around the world is a majority of these criminals and prisoners are just people that have committed the most heinous of crimes. And of course, the culture, I believe, that would likely that spurs about is how tough you are, having thick skin, and being the baddest of them all. And that's an issue. You can put criminals behind bars, but if you're not addressing the root problem to why these people are committing these crimes, they're going to commit crimes again anyway. And it's gonna be an endless cycle over and over again. And you don't do that unless there is some kind of financial motive where the facilities that are providing the cells for these criminals are making some kind of money out of it. Which, in the United States, is most definitely the case. And anyone to argue otherwise, go ahead. I'm all ears. There is plenty, and no matter what they say, there is plenty of proof that shows that there are prison facilities in the US making some kind of profit in some way. I don't think there's anything else to say on that. It's clear as day on that regard. Of course, there are some countries that take a different approach to holding up criminals. Instead of just putting them behind bars, they're trying to, I think this, like in Scandinavian countries like Sweden, Denmark, and certainly Norway, they just put them in like these, I don't know what they call it, but I know it's nothing close to hard, cold prison behind bars kind of cells. It's just a form of accommodation with elements of rehabilitation, and from what I've seen from those places, it does seem to work. Now, of course, I know there will be people that argue, but these people are criminals. They need to learn the hard way. And you know what? You're right. They should learn the hard way. But we shouldn't treat them anything lower than humans. They're still people. And even though they commit the worst possible acts ever, you can't just put people behind bars for their actions and not address the root problem. By addressing the root problem and finding ways to resolve these issues on a psychological level, then no more these people will commit the same crimes. Because, again, what's the reason why people commit these crimes? Why do people act the way they act? What is it in their lives that has caused them to act the way that they act? These are the serious questions, and only in Europe, some countries in Europe, are doing something about it. No surprise, most European countries are far more developed than many countries around the world. But because there are countries well developed that has the ability to address these issues, does not mean other countries aren't able to do the same. It's possible for other countries to do what other countries in Europe and especially Scandinavia are doing. You just have to get started, and that is all I'll say. Start from scratch, little by little, and gradually grow over time And I'm not just talking about these rehabilitation facilities for law offenders. I'm talking about addressing root causes and problems with a lot of issues in today's society. The music we listen to, there are many problems in this world, and unfortunately, there are people out there that aren't going to do anything about it. Not just because they want to see people suffer or the world to burn. It's because there is some kind of gain from having these circumstances happening somewhere around the world. And by the time these problems are addressed, there goes those people's ways of life. And when I mean by those people, I'm talking about the wealthy individuals that want to see people go through the most insufferable, unimaginable pain possible, or to see people react in such anger and outrage. And I will say it's working. However, it won't work for long until most people around the world start to catch on, and they start to realize that whatever we're seeing is just to get a reaction, and also to worsen our life quality, whether it be how we think, how we commute to place, and dare I say, the air we breathe. Yes, even the air we breathe is also a problem, because if you're breathing dirty gunk that will have negative effects in your body, you're going to get ill. Because why wouldn't you get ill? And if nothing is done about it, well, you're going to have lots of other illness related problems. Andy Miller allegedly murdered two Colombian musicians. And I say allegedly because, well, the report says she's a prime suspect of some sort. It's still developing, so we can't be too sure of it. However, it's still awful to see. It's still awful to see people who have passed away or died, and I do send my condolences to B King and Regio Clown. Very sad. Selena Gomez and Benny Blanco's wedding is this weekend. Who's coming? The wedding weekend for pop star Selena Gomez and music producer Benny Blanco will begin with a rehearsal dinner on September 26th in Hope Ranch, California, followed by the nuptials on September 27th at Seacrest Nursery in Santa Barbara. After being together for a year, Gomez and Blanco confirmed their engagement late in 2024, with Blanco mentioning that progressing their relationship felt natural. The wedding is planned by Mindy Weiss and is expected to be an A-list, star-studded event with over 170 guests, including Taylor Swift, Paris Hilton, Martin Short, and Ashley Park, who will be shuffled between venues. Gomez shared an Instagram post of her engagement ring captioned, "Forever begins now," while Blanco commented, "Hey, wait, and that's my wife," reflecting their openness about their happiness. The event's scale and guest list suggests a highly public yet intimate celebration, with the couple emphasizing a relaxed and meaningful atmosphere throughout the weekend. Firstly, good for them. Nice to see that, well, at least it's nice to see someone is going to get married and gonna have a lovely, happy life together. I hope that's the case. But I know it's gonna go down well. Of course, there were people that aren't too thrilled about the relationship, or at least the two, both Gomez and or Blanco individually. But hey, what matters is that there is a new chapter going on in their lives, and they're gonna enjoy it very well. And that, I will say that, and nothing else. And that is all. Iran recalls envoys to UK, France, Germany as UN sanctions reimposed. On Saturday, Iran recalled its ambassadors from the United Kingdom, France, and Germany for consultations ahead of the United Nations reimposition of nuclear sanctions. This recall followed these European countries triggering a snapback mechanism, the first use in a decade, citing Iran's violations of a 2015 nuclear deal. The sanctions will reinstate restrictions on arms sales, prohibit uranium enrichment and related activities, ban ballistic missile development, freeze Iranian assets abroad, and impose measures against the country's energy sector amid escalating tensions. Rial fell to over 1.1 million per US dollar on Saturday, amid 34.5% annual inflation and food prices rising more than 50%. Worsening economic hardship, the sanctions return signals increased international pressure on Iran's nuclear program despite Iran denying weapon ambitions, while economic and social strains intensify domestically. Wow, that is very unfortunate for the people of Iran. Well, this is a matter for the Iranian government to be concerned about. The people of Iran will be hit hard the most, because they're going to be paying for these new prices that has now been hit on them, giving these reimposed sanctions. And I'm certainly not defending Iran in any capacity. Risk would say the same as well. Although I have a lot to say, at the same time, I cannot say I'm taking anyone's side in this situation. This is a very complicated matter that has to be dealt with professionally, formally, and civilized. I hope. Mostly civilized. Because I can't argue that enough. Iran just isn't the same as it was decades ago. I looked at photos of Iran back when it was at a stage in the society similar to the United States. However, I need to look up. I think that there was a certain civil war in Iran going on, and it was from that moment I remember that how Iran's civilization has been impacted has changed forever, and it's pretty much the same, and it's pretty much where we are today with Iran. And something that just came to my mind now is when there was conflict and arguments between Iran and Israel, a lot of the same people that were advocating for Palestine statehood and chanting Free Palestine from Israel are also the same people that were supporting Iran. And fast forward a couple months after the conflict between Iran and Israel, I don't see many people supporting Iran. I wonder why that is. And of course, there's going to be people in Iran that will say, and they will talk about the current government. Not that I'm defending Iran's government, but also I'm not going too hard against them either, because I don't have much knowledge on most of Iran. However, I know I've heard a lot of Iranian people when there was a conflict between Iran and Israel was talking about, and everyone was talking about it. A lot of people were talking about it. They were saying there's a difference between the Iranian people and the Iranian government. We ask that you support its people, not our government. Because our government, I'm not sure what they said. I wouldn't say oppressive, although there were people although that is not too far off. However, I know someone from Iran has said something like that with those words. And I agree. There is a difference between a nation's people and a nation's government. You can like the people from the said nation, but you can also disagree with their government. Because they're not the same. The same can be said with your own country. You can like the people from your own country, yet also disagree with your own country's government. It's actually more common than you think. A lot more common. Even if your country is doing great things that surely deserves some kind of respect and support, to say you should trust your government, no, no. Why? Why would you trust your government for anything? Even if it's good, why? Why would you trust your government with anything? Even everything? I'm just saying, make of that what you will. So back to Iran and its ambassadors. What's it? Yeah, ambassadors of UK, France, and Germany. Wow, that's a lot to take in. And that's an issue. If you're having to rely on developed nations, and for whatever reason a country says, nope, we don't want you, we want you to get out, we want you to leave, cheerio, and then the country where those ambassadors are from starts to impose some kind of sanctions on that country, that's scary. It does not matter if these countries are on the good side or the bad side. The amount of reliance a country have on other countries that have bigger economies, a lot more resources, and more established infrastructure to provide goods and services, unless there is some kind of alternative or an incentive for a nation to produce its own goods and services, which they can give to other countries as a way to bolster up their own national economy. What is that country gonna do? Every country has to prepare for the worst. Even if things are going great right now, it won't last for long. Why Brooklyn Beckham says he is unfazed by gossip and family distance. On September 24th, 2025, at Bethpage Black in New York, Brooklyn Beckham said he and his wife, Nicola Peltz Beckham, keep our heads down and work amid feud reports and will soon return to Los Angeles. Sources point to the April 2022 wedding when Brooklyn Beckham grew closer to billionaire Nelson Peltz and Claudia Peltz, fueling tensions as Victoria Beckham allegedly interrupted the first dance and Nicola left in tears. In August, the couple renewed vows at Nicola's family home in New York with approximately 200 guests. No Brooklyn Beckham family members and hired Jenny Affey of UK law firm Schillings amid reported no contact with David and Victoria Beckham. Brooklyn insists he is unfazed and never worries about headlines, while sources say David Beckham visit Los Angeles to mend bridges, and Farias says he is an adult who's perfectly aware of the life he wants and he's living it. Reportedly preparing a public response, Brooklyn Beckham admires Prince Harry as a mentor and has considered book authorship while hiring Jenny Affey of Schillings for legal support. Well, I can't say I can relate. Honestly, I don't have much to say. If Brooklyn Beckham says he's unfazed, he's unfazed. I would say the same thing. Not with the story, but with anything that people say about me. If people call me horrible names and dare I say racial slurs, I don't know why, but I'm telling you it happened. I wouldn't care. It's not the first time, in my experience. I've been through stuff. I don't expect people to give me any sympathy, or I also don't expect people to understand my situation. They should at least know I've been there, and I got it all under control. If I want to talk to someone about it, I would. However, the years that I have talked to someone about whatever problems I have, it doesn't matter what advice they gave me, the advice they do give me about problems I had in my life, I just take it. And once I know of that advice, I apply that advice that people give me with the same problem that will have eventually happen again in my life. And from that experience, I never had the need to talk to anyone about my problems. Because I know how to deal with them. And I also simply just don't care. Even if people do tell me I should care. No, I'm good. I don't see anything to worry about. So back to the story about Beckham. being unfazed about gossip and family distance. Look, Brooklyn Beckham is an adult now. Why should he? Why should he be told he should do this and do that? He's capable to make his own decisions. Not too sure about whatever's going on between him and his family. But if there are problems, I do hope they get resolved. Yeah, I know sometimes there's always going to be issues with family, but they're the only people you have left. And this is not just me. I think it goes for anyone. Otherwise, just let Brooklyn live the life he wants to live. And if he does want to mend any bridges or relations, we should give anyone and everyone the space to do that. It's just that simple, in my opinion. And you know what? That is the episode.